Super great photos through metering. Super great photos through metering. Almost all of the newer digital single lens reflex, DSLR, cameras have multiple TTL, through the lens, metering modes. Each manufacturer calls their own metering modes by a different name, but basically, they all fall into 4 different categories: spot, center-weighted, multi-pattern and Nikon's matrix metering. Spot metering. Spot metering reads the light from a very small portion of the overall scene. This portion, the part inside the small circle or open rectangle in the middle of your viewfinder, generally will not be more than 9.5% of the overall scene. The advantage of spot metering is you can pinpoint the spot for focus and exposure. The disadvantage is you can pinpoint the spot you want. Now wait a minute, how can pinpointing be both an advantage and disadvantage? The advantage is you are free to choose the spot for metering, but the disadvantage is your camera's TTL meter sees everything as middle tone or 18% reflectance. So, if you pick a spot not middle tone, your whole scene could be off as far as the exposure. So take your meter reading off of something like green grass, brown bark on a tree, blue sky, light brown flesh tone, etc., or manually dial in exposure compensation to achieve the correct exposure. Your DSLR spot meter can be difficult to learn, but once you have mastered it, you will find it handy to use when you want your subject exposed right in a difficult metering situation. Center-weighted metering. The most common metering system, and one used in all point-and-shoot digital cameras, is the center-weighted metering. This system reads light from a large section in the center of the scene, weighs it heavier in the algorithm than the rest of the scene, and then reads the light from the remainder of the scene. The light read from the center of the scene accounts for about 75% of the total exposure, with rest of the scene making up the other 25%. Having a larger area to measure gives you a larger margin for error, so it makes this method easier to learn. Remember, the overall area metered needs to average out to 18% reflectance or middle tone. Anything different and you will have manually adjust the exposure by using your DSLR's exposure compensation feature. Multi-pattern metering. Also known as evaluative metering, this method has several metering and focus sensors built into the viewfinder. Once you choose the autofocus sensor that you want to use, a center-weighted metering pattern is built around your selected sensor. So, multi-pattern metering is basically the same as the center-weighted metering system, except the center-weighted reading is taken from the selected sensor instead of from the center of the viewfinder. Canon uses multi-point sensors in all of their EOS DSLR cameras. Matrix metering. Specific to Nikon, matrix metering uses multiple metering segments arranged around the camera's autofocus segments, much like the multi-pattern metering system, but it also uses a database of actual photographic situations. It works by each segment being metered individually and assigned a light level. These light levels form a contrast pattern. The light levels and contrast patterns are then filtered through the database to find the proper exposure compensation for that given scene. With this system, no manual exposure compensation is needed because the metering system automatically does it for you. Which meter to use when? Each metering system has its own use in specific situations. Generally, center-weighted is the best one when learning how to take digital photos. Once mastered, you can move to spot metering. Here you will pinpoint a spot in the scene and manually apply exposure compensation. Matrix or multi-pattern metering is great for rapidly changing light situations or when faced with highly complex lighting. Now would be a good time to dust off your digital camera manual and read up on metering modes specific to your camera and start shooting. Metering is best learned by doing. To learn more about DSLR cameras and how to take pictures through metering, click the link in the description below this video.